Hello, my name is Ethan, and welcome back to another episode of Path of Exile Sentinel League 3.18. In this episode, I'm going to be going over surviving in Sentinel League. This will not just be build specific. I think a lot of people will be able to gain benefits from this. This will be able to help you survive in Sentinel League. You have to watch each part fully to comprehend. Don't skip through. Hope you guys enjoy the video. This should really help you guys survive and understand what's happening. Alright, first part is Sentinel. So, like I said, each part, you have to watch each full part to understand. I think I have it in an order that'll make sense. Okay, sorry, I'll just get right into it. So, Sentinels. You're doing Sentinels and you're buffing up the enemies, and then this is my Sentinel controller if you're curious. But basically, people are like freaking out because Sentinel, they buff up the shit and then they die and they're like, oh my god, it's too hard and the things are too tanky. And so we've done damage in our build. We've scaled damage. We went from 1 million up to like 6 or 8, and you could do that without a mage blood. But then when you're doing Sentinel, it can feel really rippy on high tier maps because it's actually supposed to be hard. The intention of Sentinel is it's like Delhi, it's rippy. So there's T16, but then there's T16 Delhi, and then there's T16 Delhi Sentinel. So there's also tier 16 of other mechanics like tier 16 Expedition. Then there's T16 Expedition with Sentinel. It's obviously more, it's harder. So then the main thing I'm going to point out at the beginning of this is if you want to use Sentinel and Print and you're having trouble at high tiers, but that's because you're supposed to do that with the more gear that you're getting from the farm. I recommend lower tier maps you can clear with Sentinel faster, and you'll actually print, because Sentinel has like this generating rewards, and it's even good at low tiers. So it really is just how many monsters you empower and then killing per hour and how much you get, and it's really good. So like this one, fragment weapon, we got blight reward. You could look through the Sentinel locker for what the heck, currency if you want, and you could find some currency ones. I use them, and I have to get more, and then I find Sentinel, yeah, really rippy, and you could go lower tiers and it's still really profitable, and then that will improve your enjoyment of Sentinel a lot. On my work in progress tree, I'm doing a new tree where I do ritual, strong boxes, shrines. It's really fun, and I've been doing the influence, double influence sometimes. And one thing I want to mention is for softcore, most people right now are doing double altars strategy. So you take both of these notables. So this one makes you have an extra additional downside of the altars, which already makes the altars harder. The altars are absolutely insane. If you actually read the downsides and understand that, like, reducing your global defenses by 60%, making the enemy have 70% penetration on physical damage. Like, it's insane, bro. It's really disgusting mods that are so rippy. And then on top of it, I point out that this Wrath of the Cosmos, if you take 4 altars, it then makes you take double damage. It's like a 100% shock. Even just 2 altars is like 50% shock, which is, no one wants that. So then imagine doubling your requirements of defenses. So expect to die, and if you don't want to die, well, don't take this, but then you don't get as much greater and grand currency, and that's huge. And then you get the duplication shit. So yeah. Even the lesser's actually worth a lot, though, I found out, because people still need lesser to roll. You know how the gear needs dominant? Well, some people, or even to roll like the Orb of Conflict, they use a less and a high, or a high to improve the odds or decrease the odds, or changing the odds. You still do use lesser, so it's not useless to have lesser, but this is still a really great node for the doubling. And it's so little points, and in softcore the rippiness doesn't matter. But if you were tired of dying, there are actual things you're doing that make so Sentinel and alter nodes. Most important before I even get into build specific stuff. Now build specific. Alright, I'd like to first get started with Flask. So these are my starter Flasks, and I want to go through what you should have. So the Flask base, like Divine Life Flask, you got a Quartz Flask, you got a Granite Flask, you got a Quicksilver, and then I was trying out Jade, but honestly Ruby. Okay, so now let me show you this. So what I had ended up doing was immune to shock on a Ruby. We did the move speed on a Granite. We had Quartz, Ellie res, and it was increased armor on the Quicksilver, so use on full. And then I had the freeze on cannot be frozen, and I think at one point I had this move speed as the cannot be frozen instead. So as you can see, I like to use this one, which is called immune to shock during the flask, but it comes with this stupid mod called less duration. So I put this on the Ruby because Ruby only has 20 of 50. It's less charges, where the other one's 30, 60. So doing it on this one, then doing reduced charges made it 15 of 50, so I can click it 3 times and use on full. So then the duration's still 6 seconds, which is really long. You can see my quartz without the less duration is actually only 7.2. So I have phasing for 7, shock immune for 6, and then this one compressed 3 times, this one only 2 times, so clearly, and then gain 4 charges. So it kind of makes up for it, and then increased duration move speed and armor 8 seconds, and you could obviously get the extra quality for the duration. I didn't have it. And then we have increased armor, yeah, so you'd want that somewhere throughout. And then I said cannot be frozen would probably be on the Quicksilver if you could, and then put the increased armor on the granite or the quartz instead of this Ellie res. You don't really need the move speed or the Ellie res. You'd want the increased armor, and you want cannot be frozen if you don't have this. So you'd want the this one, the immune to freeze and chill during flask, less duration. I had it on the Jade, and I think it was like this, where I had the shock on the Quicksilver, freeze on the Jade. But as I showed, when you do it on the Ruby, huge duration, which is really sick. And then I'd actually rather do freeze on the Quicksilver, because you want the granite and the quartz up all the time to survive. And then a side note, you could run one of these one time if you get cannot regen with your life flask, and this eternal mana flask you can run cannot regen, which is really cool. And this was the life flask, divine life flask with I like the 50% of recovery applied instantly, because it actually gives you a bigger heal, and then you can still get the bleed immune. Yeah, it's really sick. Instead of the 66% recovered instantly, and it has, or whatever, half instant recovery where 66% reduced amount, it's shit. This one's way more. Yeah, I have one more trick before we get into the actual build. I know, guys, it's insane. So, I figured out... I'm poor. Wait. Okay. I figured out... Why won't it... Because I don't have a map in? Whatever. I figured out there's domination on the tree. 4 seat. Okay? On the map device. Okay, so that's cool. And then I also figured out I was getting a lot of shrines because when you block everything, you get shrines. So then, and you get a lot of strong boxes. Because I figured out that when you read this, that the only things that are not blockable are Essence, Rogue Exiles, Shrines, Strongbox, and Tormented Spirits. So technically, if you block a lot of shit, it's actually really, it's really good to invest in those other things because they're extra content. And I've theory crafted a tree where you could invest in those things only, so not have any of these, so block this and the ritual, and then you would do Strongbox, Tormented Spirits, Rogue Exiles, what I tried to do before, but again, and then it would be even better. You'd have so much of it, it would be fucking everywhere, and it would be insane. I want to try that. It sounds interesting. But ritual's so cool, and shrines. So then the strat is very simple. Always take the map sustain on the tree, but here you would have shrine, the shrine stuff. This one gives you extra pack, but this one makes you get an extra buff, and also they have more effect, and then they also can make it so they last longer too, and then you can get a covetous shrine, which is quantity. Okay, so the shrines I found out can give you wait for this. It's 90 reses. So where I have 75, so you take an altar, it just gives you 90s. My 16k armor went to 25, 26,000 on one of the altars, one of the shrines. There's one that gives the monsters that are around it immunity, and when you take it, you're immune. You don't take any damage. There's one that gives you crazy life regen and mana regen, and that took my 900 regen up to 1800. It was insane. So any build with that would be completely broken. And then there's the move speed one. There's the one that chills. There's even the one that shocks. That could increase your damage. There's other ones too, like for minions that could increase your damage because you get shock without having skitterbots. And they last for 1 minute. So there are more possible defensive options than just your build. So this is why I say this is going to hit a lot of people. I've mentioned the altar thing, which hits everybody softcore, and then also anyone could be running shrines, which is really powerful. The buffs you get to be able to just try it. You've tried shrines before. You don't need the gold. It's just this league is so rippy that you kind of break the game with immunities, without and then just building damage. And also a small point while you have it, domination with the shrines. Then when you're doing more damage and you don't have to build defenses. And you're getting free defense, and then you're building more. Killing shit actually increases your survivability because when things are dead, they don't deal damage. It's just a fact. Okay, now real build stuff specific to the build. I'm sorry it took so long. Okay, hello. So you want general build guide info of how to survive after all that like weird Sentinel League weird stuff. Okay, abusable. Okay, so this. You probably want to get your 75 elemental reses. It's going to sound basic, but I'm going from the beginning. Okay, so the beginning is capping elemental resistances at 75. I try to do this as early as Act 1, level 12. Merveil, you can cap your cold res and then you're immune, except for physical damage from those stupid things you summon, and then you can already cap your elemental res because you can craft on the crafting bench at level 12. Elemental res. You may not everyone knows this. We figured it out because of hardcore, and we figured out the crafting bench is disgusting. Level 12. It takes care of you. They probably want to delete it because it's so good. So then I would recommend while leveling, like getting your LE reses, I think that armor is pretty standard, so you would try to get as much armor as possible. The biggest armor pieces you're going to get are your chest plate and possibly a shield, maybe the helmet. Your boot is probably going to be move speed, so you're probably not going to get res there, and it's easier to get a magic, an intelligence boot, so you can get the 4 link of blue for like your or whatever, like for the phantasm skelly, the minion damage, all that shit, and then the green, 1 green. It's easier to do that in the boot because you also have to get the move speed, and the move speed was the top priority, not the armor. So I would recommend an int boot so you could get the easy link and the move speed, whereas if you do a strength boot, then it's move speed, and then it will never have the colors, and you've just wasted sockets. Then another thing is, armor bases. Getting some armor is good, and then the early determination that you can get at Act 6 is really good when you get that, and then also the early, as I showed earlier in the video, the using a granite flask is really important for your physical damage reduction, because once you have the LE reses, you're really good to elemental during leveling, and then even after, like I'll talk about how to upgrade elemental mitigation more, but this is the base. This is what the game expects you to have. Armor is a whole nother story. So I would want you to get up to like 8k or higher, maybe 16k or higher, maybe even 25 you could get up to. Like I'm at 16k with a mage blood on, and physical is still a weakness in my build. So then I have a tip for you. If you didn't know, okay, so some people I also have the endurance charges, which is the minimum endurance charge craft on the rings, and the amulet. I could get out here if I had an open suffix, but obviously I have this cold res and I can't get it. But you can craft minimum endurance charge, and this is from a June unveil, and then you can craft it. So June unveil, and then you can craft it, and then minimum endurance charge, and this is 4% physical damage reduction and 4% LE reses, which is really sick. But now I wanted to get into this part that I messed up. Okay, chaos res. So you guys may know about Toxic, and you may have died to Toxic. It's this, you kill a monster, and then it summons some green orbs, and they fly to you, and they hit you. People are probably dying to that a lot because they don't have any chaos res. Like, if you have negative 52, you're dead. Let me explain something. So, on eye level 85, so let's say an Uber Blight. So, you know Blight, but Uber Blight, okay? I had 75 chaos, and I had 500 regen. I get hit by a Toxic, and I'm not regenning anymore, which meant that the chaos damage was 500 per second, matching my regen at 75 chaos. So what we figured out is basically if you had 0 chaos res, this would be 2,000 chaos damage a second. You would need 2,000 regen to be able to sustain it. Otherwise, you're degenning. Second one, you can have multiple toxic. So like they could just keep coming and just keep leaving the degen on the ground. You're going to die if you can't sustain it. Also, not being able to recover while the toxic is happening makes it really like terrible. And then there's another part where some people actually have negative 52, I pointed out, not 0. So they're actually taking 3,000. That's insane, dude. You're not sustaining that, especially early. It's way easier to get to 75 chaos and then just ignore chaos and have higher regen. And then yeah, it's highly recommended. Highly recommended. Huge, massive. All right, so you've gotten decent armor. You have some okay physical damage reduction. This is a lie, by the way. It's not actually 90%. Armor is in this calculator is treated as if the enemy's hitting you with a small physical hit, and the bigger the enemy's physical hit, the less your armor mitigates. So because it's like a versus, and so this number goes down. So actual physical damage reduction is a lot lower, and so you still need more. Trust me, it's your weakness where you have 75 damage reduction of these ones. You do not have 75. This is not 90. 90 to small hits, which is why armor's really nice, but not 90 to massive hits, which is what you're really scared of. The one-shots is yeah, especially crits, etc. So then here's where I'll go into extra powerful, like, okay, so if you wanted to take your base stuff and scale it up, because you're like, Ethan, you have a mage blood and the LE Flask. Ethan, you have the always increase armor. You have high armor. You get some extra stuff that we can't have. How do we make up for you having a mage blood? So I guess the first thing would be, I'll talk about a Stygian Vice. So you can wear a Stygian Vice with life, reses, attributes. It doesn't have to be fractured. It doesn't have to be anything. It just life, attributes, reses, all the stuff you need, like strength, maybe fire, cold, chaos, whatever, life. And then you could even go an elder belt. Instead of a fracture belt, you could go an elder belt and get percent life, and craft this with life and harvest, and then just hit both of them. And then keep whatever reses you get or whatever attributes. And then the jewel, very important, is T1 taunt, T1 blind. So it's 5% plus blind and 6% plus taunt is T1 taunt blind. This was really helpful when I didn't have enough damage, and especially the Sentinel monsters and the ones I was buffing up, and any like juicy boss. It would actually be really nice to be able to taunt and blind the boss. And then blind was actually helping me for minion accuracy too. It's part of why I put we have precision in the build again, just for accuracy, for the golems, for the monsters that are hasted, that have 100% increased evasion. But then you run a life, taunt, blind, jewel, and then life with reses, strength, attributes, whatever, just to make it cheaper and fit it into your build of whatever you're missing. I would recommend, to be honest, getting whatever you can fit on this for as cheap as possible, and probably doing this like one of the first items in your build, and then building the other items around it because they're cheaper. This is usually really expensive to get a well-crafted Stygian Vice, and otherwise you would have to craft it yourself. Just based on my own personal experience, unset ring, Stygian Vice, all the other like more rare stuff is usually harder to craft, which is why I usually put them in the build first and build around them, rather than trying to tailor this as my perfect piece after the fact, right? It's easier to put this in first and build around it than after. Okay, so then you start with this, and then it would go with, how would you upgrade? So this is just the belt replacement and getting some extra reses and attributes and the extra jewel that I don't have. I don't have taunt blind in my build, which is really nice quality of life, especially on bosses. You then get, okay, so I have extra LE mitigation and the extra armor and the extra regen, right? What I'm recommending is you have two options. I also think that even without the mage blood, spell suppression is core. Okay, so quick explanation here. Spell suppression, at 50%, let's say you had a 50% chance to spell suppress, it's kind of similar to block, where you have, like, let's say 25% chance to block, but you had a glancing blows that's nerfed, and it gave you double the block chance, but the block was only 50% of the damage, right? So your spell block would be 50% spell block, and it would be 50% of the damage from the hit. It would be 50% damage reduction. This is like 35% damage reduction from blocks, right? Okay. It's interesting. It would be better at 50, but point is, spell suppression is broken, and the difference is block, even at 75%, is inconsistent. Spell suppression at 50% is inconsistent. But when you get spell suppression to 100%, the feeling of taking half damage from spells is... there's, like, nothing like it. I think of Fortify, and I'm like, yeah, 10% damage reduction. I think of the old Fortify from Kingmaker, 20%. I think of normal Fortify, yeah, like 20%. You could scale it up. They got up to, like, 72 or something before 78. This is 50 2 spells 100% of the time, and spells is half of the game, because the game is broken down into attacks and spells. If you could do this to attacks as well, we would do it, but we can't. We have evasion. It's not the same. We like the guarantee half damage, obviously. What the fuck is this? So then people will, so then my point is to raise, armor and LE mitigation. There's 2 options, basically. You can run a brass dome. So if you guys don't know, I'll pull up a brass dome. Give me. Alright, so yeah, you could run a brass dome with 6 link, and you could divine it for the 5% all max res. You could divine it, you could 6 link it yourself, which is probably really hard, or you could get one of these or whatever. There's more options. Just hold. You don't have to do a brass dome just because this is the first thing I showed. There's more options. Rare chest plate's really good. This is just a simple, easy for the people who are extremely fucking lazy. It's going to give you the 5 max all res. It's going to give you fat armor and no crit, which is going to feel really good. This would be a great option for tankiness. Raises your max LE res. It's going to feel similar to the mitigation I get from a Mage Blood, except it won't work as well against minus max reses, because the whole power was from the max reses, where with a Mage Blood it's less LE damage taken, which works with minus max res. Like, when you, let's say you invest in max res, it was really expensive, and then they delete 12%, 15% of your max res. It's insane. You work so hard, where building flat, I mean, like just getting res cap is cheap, but building max res is expensive. Do you see my difference? You get, like, crazy chaos res, right? But then building max res, you're getting none, and then they're taking it away like it's candy, and it's like, no, we spent a lot, where they can take it away. Yeah, so that's my point. The mod minus max res will ruin this, but then you could handle crits more. So then there's all, and it also makes strength not bonus to life, so you can't stack strength to get extra life, which kind of sucks, and this does make you have less life, and it has no life, so a rare chestplate is comparable. Okay, and then there's other ways to mitigate elemental now. Now let me get into that. Alright, so there's this jewel that came out, I think last season. It was Melding of the Flesh, where we're able to have minus res, and people are like, Dorianis, but then also the elemental reses are capped by your highest max elemental resistance instead, so you're able to run this, and the Purity of Lightning, or whichever purity you want to run, and the aura effect from the tree, and then potentially even the new influence currency, like I'll show you here. I actually have it already, the 1 max lightning res, so you could raise your lightning, and then you could run the melding and with the purity, so if you got extra reservation. So this is where I'm showing you, this is still expensive too. To get a melding is expensive, because it's another great option to mitigate, comparable and competitive, and not too hard to fit it in, because it's a jewel socket. You have to get the extra overcap of res, and then you run 1 purity, and maybe even spec some extra max res on the tree, and now you're an absolute tank, and you could even be tankier than the brass dome's max res potentially. But the brass dome was pretty cheap for a 6 link. It's actually kind of cool how like affordable the brass dome is compared to the melding, actually. The only problem I'll point out now is I talk about how I say spell suppression is really good with either of these. Okay, so this one requires extra jewel, extra aura, extra reservation, extra gem socket, the extra like mods for the max lightning or fire or cold, whatever you're trying to do. This could be pretty hard. And then this is only elemental, not physical. Okay. So the real stuff, real stuff. This one, on the other hand, is kind of cheap, real cool, can get the 5%, and it's 6 linked, and then it just kind of fits in the build. But then the problem is, okay, I'll get into it now. I talked about spell suppression. Both of these would want to get spell suppression cap. I'm telling you, every build now, just spell suppression cap is core. It's so good. I have wrote down how I would recommend spell suppression capping in our builds. So the first thing I'd like to mention, because this is where we should start, is when you're thinking about spell suppression, I think about 100%. Less than that is inconsistent and more like block. It's still good. I still like having some spell suppression chance, but the difference is massive when you get to 100. So when you're close to 100 and you can get the final amount, I'll show you what you can get. So you can get this 3%, 10%, 3%. So this is 16 for free, and you could path to Mage Ban. And what I mean by free is 4 points, and you path over here because you want to be here for the leadership, and this is just part of our tree. And then this is where you could get some spell suppression without going too far out of the way, okay? We're not going all the way into Ranger. This is as close as it can be. This Mage Ban, I'll talk about 150 decks, because 250 is kind of high, but 150 is pretty expected once you're over here, because you get the dex. This is 3 points. You could even take a dex node possibly over here, or you have your items, and then there's extra dex points. You get a lot of free dex just from the pathing, and then your gear, and so I'm expecting like 150 by this point, and you'd get 10% spell suppression from this Mage Bin, and then 16%, so 26%, and you would only need 74% through the gear. So with, I'll treat it like you have the Brass Dome, okay? So with the Brass Dome, you won't have a body armor. How are you going to get this? Okay, so you can get, technically, in-game, have the 19% glove, the 19% glove, and the 18% helm. These are fractured. Well, technically, you could just do armor evasion base and do the normal spell suppression 22, and then you'll be able to get 22, 22, 22. You don't have to get the fractured mod, technically. Obviously, fractured, then you have the guarantee, and that would be cool. And you could get a fractured 22, but that would probably be expensive. But the main point is you could get 22 on the boot, glove, helmet, 66. So technically, without the chest plate, all you need is 10 more. Where would you get the 10? This glove implicit can actually go to 12%. So you only have to get it to the 4th one. And so you can see here, there's 4 currencies. The grand is the same price as the lesser, basically. So it's like 80 per X. So you could get this mod for under an X, and then you would have to increase it 1 tier with an Orb of Conflict from the grand to the exceptional mod, 50-50. So this would be like an X or 2 maximum, and then that would be the final spell suppression. The difference also, this is why I say Mage Bane is really cool. You could also cheap out on some of these pieces because of Mage Bane. So technically, if you got a little bit more dex, so let's say instead of 150, you got up to 250, you get 6% more. Now you could cheap out that 1% on the glove, so now you only have to get 9%, which makes it only rollable with grand. You don't have to use the Orbs of Conflict. You don't have to gamble it. It's really easy. Then there's also, if you get a little bit more, you could lower the spell suppression on one of these items from 22% to maybe tier 2, 19%. That would be really cool. Technically, you could go more dex, but it's not really that worth it because you're getting the dex just for the spell suppression, and that's really expensive. And like I was thinking, you get 45 dex on a piece of gear, and that's only 3%. That doesn't sound that great when you're getting 22% in one mod. It makes the 22% seem really insane when Mage Bane's only. So that's why the Mage Bane being a single or 2 points potentially for 10% is really nice, since you don't really care about the evasion or the accuracy. Turning it into spell suppression's actually good, but building extra decks just for the spell suppression, not. If you already have the 150 decks, it's actually worth it. Really cool. Really neat that you're able to do that. And then this makes it viable to fit this in both the builds, the Brass Dome or the Melding of the Flesh, depending on which way you do it. This one's a little bit harder, but I think it may be more, it's probably more powerful, especially with the ESCI Aura Stacker version, where we went up here and get the extra 20% aura effect, and maybe even the extra 15% aura effect on us. So you have the 35 on the Purity, so you'd get like an extra max res, which is really sick, and then obviously the extra damage in your CI, so you'd be immune to chaos. You don't even have to build chaos res. You just be spell suppression, max res, aura effect, purity, like my old build when I did the AFK Wave 30 Simulacrum in 3.17, but it was with Mage Blood. So I'm pointing out you could even do this probably without it, because you could technically over cap with your reses, before the Mage Blood. It's just I didn't think of doing that before, like actually putting. Either way, this was a lot of gearing advice, lots of tips on defenses, lots of ways to improve. The main TLDR: Sentinel low tier, expect difficulty at high tier. Altars is really rippy. You could take them off for the ease of altars. Altars is really rewarding and worth it. I don't recommend taking them off if you're in softcore. Flasks are highly important. Definitely fix your flasks if you haven't already fixed them, and make them use on full, which, if you didn't know, instilling orbs, you can go to the vendor and craft on flasks, use on full. And then these mods of regen actually comes from Junon Veils on Cinder Swallow Flasks. I forgot to mention that part. People might not know that. Cinder Swallow, you can unveil on it, and get these mods. And then Brass Dome's one of the tank options for armor, crit reduction, and the LE mitigation. Doesn't help with chaos, but with 75 chaos and decent regen, you should be good. And maybe spell suppression, like I said. And then the other one with the melding is a really great option too. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for hanging out. I hope this helped you. If this helped you at all, leave a like on this video. Let's hit 75 likes in one day on this video. Thank you guys for all the support. I think we could do it on this. This is a really great video. I think we could do 75 likes in one day. Thank you guys for all the support. And if you guys are new, if you have any questions, if you don't know what's going on, leave a comment in the comment section below. And if you guys like the video, hey, hit that subscribe button so you guys are notified of more of these helpful videos. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for hanging out. If you guys made it to this point in the video, comment fart. Bye.